Dangerous entities? Like Kythar? Elias asked, gesturing subtly towards the chamber where the Death Stalker had so violently demonstrated its capabilities. The star being shimmered, its internal light intensifying slightly. Kythar is a prime example. But there are others. Beings whose very existence threatens the fabric of reality. Creatures whose appetites are insatiable. Intelligences that crave only chaos and destruction. And you study them, Elias said, to understand how to, what? Contain them? Control them? Weaponize them? All of those options have been considered, Morrell said. But our primary goal is to understand. To learn what makes these creatures tick, what drives their behavior. If we can understand them, perhaps we can find a way to mitigate the threat they pose. Mitigate or weaponize? Elias pressed, his gaze fixed on Zinther. The Valdarian met his gaze unflinchingly. The Stellar Alliance is committed to the preservation of life, Dr. Thorne. We only resort to force as a last resort. Understanding is our first, and most powerful, defense. I hope that's true, Elias said, unconvinced. He knew the dark side of science, the temptation to exploit knowledge for power. Even on Earth, the noblest research often had a shadow, a potential for misuse. What are the rules, then? Elias asked. Can't imagine you expect me to enter the tank with one of these apex beasts with nothing but a wetsuit and a smile. Zinther permitted himself a rare, almost imperceptible smile. Of course not, Doctor. You will have access to all the necessary equipment, the specialized observation suites to start, and a modified wetsuit that has been tested with our apex predators. After which, you will have full control over the equipment's capabilities and their use cases. We may value safety, but results are what we need the most. Elias nodded slowly, absorbing the information. All right, show me this equipment. I want to test out their strengths and weaknesses. Very well. For the next few days, Elias immersed himself in the intricacies of Project Leviathan. He was shown the vast library of alien knowledge, filled with data on countless species from across the galaxies. He examined the advanced containment systems, force fields, and energy weapons designed to subdue even the most powerful creatures. And he met with the team of researchers, a motley crew of beings from all corners of the Alliance, each with their own unique expertise. There was Dr. Lyra, a wizened Kthar whose mastery of energy manipulation was unrivaled. Then Dr. Forlag, a hulking Grondian with an encyclopedic knowledge of physiology. Elias quickly learned that Project Leviathan was more than just a research facility. It was a living, breathing ecosystem of scientific curiosity and cautious experimentation. He also learned that the apex beasts that lived in the abyss had to be protected. During one of his tours, Morrell led Elias to a particularly fascinating section of the station of vast bioluminescent forest grown hydroponically under artificial suns. This is our recreation area, Doctor, Morrell explained. It is important for the crew to have a space to relax and connect with nature, even in this artificial environment. The forest was breathtaking. Trees of all shapes and sizes grew in abundance, their leaves glowing with a soft, ethereal light. Strange, alien flowers bloomed in vibrant colors, their petals unfurling in hypnotic patterns. And the air was filled with the gentle hum of insects and the melodious calls of unseen creatures. As Elias gazed in awe at the alien landscape, he noticed a small, unassuming figure standing near the edge of the forest. It was Dorv, the squat, purple alien, observing the scene with a somber expression. Dr. Thorne, Dorv said, his voice low and gravelly. May I have a word? Elias nodded and followed Dorv to a secluded corner of the forest, away from the bustling activity of the other researchers. I must confess, Doctor, Dorv said, his mandibles clicking nervously, that I have reservations about this project. About you? Elias raised an eyebrow. Reservations? You think I'm going to get myself killed? That is not my primary concern, Dorv replied. I am concerned about the ethical implications of what we are doing here. These creatures, these apex beasts, are not simply specimens to be studied and dissected. They are living beings, with their own thoughts, their own feelings, their own rights. And you think I'm going to exploit them? Elias asked, a touch of anger creeping into his voice. You think I'm going to turn them into weapons? I do not know what your intentions are, Dr. Thorne, Dorv said, his black eyes unyielding. But I know that the Stellar Alliance has a history of questionable decisions when it comes to dealing with powerful species. I fear that Project Leviathan may simply be a prelude to something far more sinister. Elias stared at Dorv, his mind racing. He had sensed a certain unease among some of the researchers, a quiet undercurrent of dissent beneath the surface of scientific curiosity. But he hadn't realized the depth of their concerns. I can't promise you that I'll change the Alliance's mind, Dorv, Elias said. But I can promise you this. I will treat these creatures with the respect they deserve. And I will fight to ensure that their well-being is not sacrificed for the sake of some galactic power play. Dorv considered his words for a moment before nodding slowly. I appreciate that, Doctor. I truly do. The universe will be looking at you. That next morning, Elias found himself standing before the Leviathan tank, his heart pounding in his chest as he prepared to face Kydar for the first time. He was clad in a specialized wetsuit developed by the Valdarians, an armored shell designed to withstand extreme pressures and provide some degree of protection against the Death Stalker's formidable weaponry. Before he entered, however, an old friend popped up into his head. All right, Dad, time for a safety check, said his daughter, Ori Thorne, as she laughed. Before you go, is everything ready? Yes, I knew I could always rely on my favorite girl to help a man out. Elias laughed. All right, give me a couple seconds, I think I am going to need it. He could never forget the promise he made to his daughter, to always prioritize her safety. It took approximately 15 minutes, but the systems had finally aligned and he was ready to go into the belly of the beast. I'll see you on the other side, Dad, said Ori. The artificial ocean inside the Leviathan tank pressed around Elias, a cold, viscous embrace. He activated the helmet lights, casting a narrow beam into the inky blackness. Visibility was poor, barely a few meters. The pressure was noticeable even through the specialized suit, a constant reminder of the power held within this alien environment. Then he saw it. 2 crimson orbs materialized from the darkness, burning like twin embers in the void. Kydar. The Death Stalker drifted closer, its massive form slowly resolving in the dim light. Elias could now fully appreciate its terrifying majesty. The scale was incomprehensible, the jagged teeth, the alien grace. It was the embodiment of predatory perfection. He could feel the weight of centuries of evolution, of countless hunts and kills, radiating from the creature. Elias steeled himself, recalling the training exercises, the simulations, the advice of the Valdarian scientists. But nothing could have truly prepared him for this. He felt a flicker of primal fear, a deep-seated instinct that screamed at him to flee. But he pushed it down, focusing on the task at hand. Hello, Kydar, Elias said, his voice echoing slightly within his helmet. It's me, Elias Thorne. I'm here to learn. Are you ready to learn too? Kydar remained motionless, its crimson eyes fixed on Elias. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Elias felt a bead of sweat trickle down his forehead, stinging his eyes. Was this it? Was this the end? Then a response. Not a sound, not a physical movement, but a powerful sensation, a telepathic push against his mind. It was a torrent of raw emotion, anger, suspicion, resentment. But beneath it all, a flicker of curiosity? Prove it, the thought resonated in his mind, clear and forceful. Prove you are not like the others. Elias took a deep breath, fighting to maintain his composure. All right, Kydar, he said, his voice amplified and projected into the water. Let's see if we can understand each other. Can you tell me where you came from? Then, as he remembered what the other scientists had told him, he had to ask Kydar why it was doing it. There was a pause. Elias wondered if he had made a mistake. But before Elias had given up hope, the alien beast had finally answered. Nexus V is my prison. The rage behind the name could almost be palpable as Elias imagined it, and he knew that they were dealing with eons of torment for the beast. With his peace told, Elias attempted to move closer to the great beast, wanting to prove to Kydar that he was not a threat. However, before Elias could take one step forward, something in the water had hit him, knocking the scientist out of the water. What then proceeded was a world of pain. He could feel his body being dragged along by an unseen entity. The world before him was nothing but blackness as he could feel his body being tossed and turned all around. "Why do you resist? I am giving you what you want," Kydar had said. "There is only one way out, just trust me," Elias responded. All the beast had to respond was for the bindings to disappear. With that freedom known, both Elias and Kydar were able to swim out with their combined skill and strength through the station. What lied on the other side, however, was something neither had expected. All members of the Stellar Alliance were gone. And what in their place was a fleet unlike anything that Elias had ever known. The ship seemed to take up most of his vision as he had finally escaped the hellhole. All they knew was that something truly big had to be the reasoning for them to show up like that. "What in the world?" Elias couldn't respond with Kydar's transmission. "Now we leave. I am done helping those that imprisoned us for too long," said Kydar. Now it was that a choice was asked of Elias, to stay among the rest of humanity who saw him as nothing but a sea man, or to side with an alien monster that he had no idea whether to trust or not. There wasn't any real decision to make. He had decided this the moment he had arrived in this facility. "Then, let's go where they can't find us," said Elias as he then started to work on the equipment. "But give me a minute to contact those friends of mine, would you?" And so it was that Elias had asked for one final request, to be able to bring those that he was friends with to a new utopia. He couldn't exactly tell what the beast thought. It was what Elias wanted, however. "Thank you," Elias said. After his message to the planet, Elias finally set out in what was to be a journey with Kydar. A true partnership for a friendship. Before Elias could get his mind off of things, however, he had to ask an important question first. "This may be sudden," said Elias, "but I really would like to know, if you could destroy civilizations? You're not gonna destroy Earth, right?" Kydar paused and thought, before responding with only the slightest bit of malice. "Those on the outside that have ruined my name, then I would. But only if they force it. I am not one for malice or senseless slaughter. Do not fret, my friend, your home is safe. I have finally achieved what I have been striving for." With that, the unlikely duo had set out, Elias to the stars, and Kydar to a new life. As the news reached Earth that a human was last spotted with a violent apex predator, and then they went missing to many other solar systems, the people felt only fear. Humans have always had this special relationship, however. Despite our lack of teeth, claws, scales, our greatest power has always been to understand what cannot be understood. One day, however, a new transmission from the galaxy would come. This transmission, coming not from a human, but from an apex predator in its own right. "We have finally understood what Dr. Thorne had wanted to show us. It has taken much time and effort, but we realize. We too can become those that you call empathetic. There is an apex predator here on Earth you call humanity. We too will reach for the stars, as you all are. Our fates are now forever intertwined." The Deathstalker and Elias Thorne. The world had changed. Morrel led Elias down another corridor, the air growing noticeably colder. A rhythmic thrumming vibrated through the deck plates, a low, guttural resonance that seemed to penetrate bone and marrow. It was a sound that spoke of immense power, barely contained. "We are approaching the Leviathan containment zone," Morrel announced, his voice subdued. "Please prepare yourself, Dr. Thorne. What you are about to see is not for the faint of heart." They arrived at a colossal chamber, the walls lined with observation ports made of some impossibly strong, translucent material. The chamber was dimly lit, casting long, eerie shadows that danced and writhed like living entities. The source of the thrumming vibration was now deafening, a primal heartbeat that resonated with the very fabric of Abyssia. "Brace yourself for what you will see next," he said. Morrel placed his hand on a panel, and the largest observation port, directly ahead of them, shimmered and cleared. Elias stepped forward, his breath catching in his throat. It was Kythar, a Nexorian Death Stalker. And it was unlike anything Elias had ever imagined. Pictures could not describe, readings could not calculate the sheer threat and intimidation that just being there could impose. It seemed all of the alien crewmates all had an equal amount of fear, even those that knew what it was like. He then took in that to be said to be only 4 in the entire galaxy, they would all be fools to think that they were doing their part. "What do you think, Dr. Thorne? Is it what you expected?" asked Morrill. This thing wasn't just an apex predator. It was an instrument of utter devastation, a biological weapon crafted by forces Elias could barely comprehend. He could see why they called it the Death Stalker. Elias's respect turned into something a lot more akin to fear. Its form was vaguely serpentine, but far more massive than any serpent he had ever seen on Earth. Its body was segmented, like some nightmarish fusion of reptile and insect, covered in plates of obsidian-like armor that shimmered with an oily sheen. Rows of glowing, bioluminescent fins rippled down its flanks, propelling it through the water with terrifying speed and grace. The whole composition was that of fear. The head was indescribable. Elongated and flattened, with no discernible eyes, but possessed of 4 sets of jaws with rotating teeth as far as one could see. Not even any amount of engineering in all of Earth would be as perfect. From the top of the head ran a set of pulsing organs, all glowing an angry crimson color that sent waves through the alien beast's body. The tank that was imprisoning this thing didn't seem like enough to stop it, which just heightened the fear that Elias was facing. "You are going to encounter it in a cage, correct?" asked Elias. "Correct. Our gear is designed to prevent it from entering. Although with my time here, none of the protective measures truly feel any different. The best that they can do is simply delay," responded Dorv, which didn't help Elias's case. "In the meantime, do you wish to familiarize yourself with any of the equipment used to contain it?" asked Morrill. "Perhaps the various audio recordings might tell you more of the behavior of the beast?" Elias was pulled from his daze by the question. With a shake of his head, he was all the more ready to go in now. "There are many things that can be studied from here," said Elias. "But what makes me special is that I act and adapt to what occurs before me. I'm ready." The alien crew did what they could to try and persuade Elias to do a lot more work, as none of them wanted their lives put in danger again. But Elias Thorne did what he wanted to do, and there was little that they could do to stop it. There was a certain level of excitement that came with knowing how close death was. It made him feel alive. There was the obvious problem: the first researchers that had come over were seasoned veterans, so why him? Why was Elias chosen instead? There were clearly certain things that they were not saying. "Be wary, Dr. Thorne," Morrill said as they entered the preparation chamber, his black eyes holding a hint of genuine concern. "Kythar is unlike anything you have faced before. It possesses an intelligence that is almost malevolent. It enjoys toying with its prey before it devours them. Don't expect it to be predictable, and whatever it does, expect the unexpected." "As a marine biologist, I have seen many things, Doctor," responded Elias. "I am one for the history to be made." As he entered the water, he noticed some changes. For one, the ocean current started to get a lot heavier than usual. Then what felt like a chill going right up his spine. And with one glance he could finally find out what all the fuss was about Kythar. It turned around, and what Elias saw was pure aggression that he could not deny existed. It knew what he was, and it was ready to kill. Elias focused. What would he do? "Remember, Doctor, what can kill you is out there." All he could do was to take a deep breath. At that point there wasn't any backing out, the beast was ready, and whether or not he was there to make it out. What Thorne had to do was simply respond. Elias floated suspended in the frigid water, the weightless environment allowing him a measure of calm amidst the rising anxiety. His heart pounded against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the oppressive silence. He focused on controlling his breath, a trick he had learned long ago, when facing down great whites in the shark-infested waters off Guadalupe Island. Dr. Thorne, are you certain about this? Morrow's voice crackled in his ear. The protective gear is essential for your survival. It is equipped with stun grenades, an electric barrier, and high-speed propulsion. Elias took a deep breath, letting it out slowly. The Valdarians, with their advanced technology and interstellar experience, couldn't understand his approach. They saw Kaidar as a weapon, a problem to be solved with brute force and technological superiority. They had forgotten, or perhaps never learned, the fundamental truth that Elias had dedicated his life to understanding, that even the most terrifying predators were creatures of instinct and habit, driven by the same basic needs as all living beings. I'm afraid this won't work for what I need it for. A cage is simply too aggressive, an immediate assumption of hostile behavior, replied Elias. What is needed most is what I believe will help us all in the long run here. A simple bit of trust. But the other researchers? Dorv interjected, his mandibles clicking nervously. What happened to them was as a result of the trust of the apex beast. Elias considered. All that Dorv said was true, but he was simply going to have to find a way. After all, it's what he had spent his whole life doing. They were going in there to take stuff from them that they would rather not. Elias retorted. You are acting, but they don't need to act aggressive if you are on their side. So let's just put an end to this debate, and just heed my wishes. After all, it's what made you hire me, didn't it? Silence fell again, and Elias used it to disconnect the tether that would have been used to save him from any potential accident, leaving the others in shock at what he has done. His life was now entirely on himself, and whether or not he would be able to build something with Kaidar. The only thing he had to do was begin. Very well, Dr. Thorne, as you wish, said Morrill in response to the disconnection. I am ordering all systems to stand by and prepare to protect the hull. Let us hope that you know what it is that you are doing. Elias nodded before setting his sights for what he knew was a path to glory, perhaps a path to doom, or most likely both. Taking a couple breaths, he took a step. All right, Echo, take it easy now, said Elias, hoping that his actions would allow Kaidar to at least start thinking a little bit differently. So now, let's see what exactly we have to do. Elias activated his equipment and started to observe what the beast would do. It responded at first with a lot of suspicion, as it was used to seeing that as its standard operating behavior. At first it seemed all hopeless, but as Elias began doing what he usually did back on Earth, Kaidar began mirroring. It seemed to work. The beast seemed to relax a bit as Elias's confidence continued to grow. He slowly started to approach the large beast more. He would have to be wary about his movements since one thing could lead to an end. As he got closer, Elias reached out his hand. Now, Elias cooed. I am no harm, am I? Don't let what you went through change who you are, right? There is more to life than just death. With that, Elias was able to put his hand on the hide of Kaidar. From there his entire mind was blown. Everything and every signal it had been sending to him were now directly in his brain. He felt what it felt, thought what it had thought, and knew what it had known. Despite not even being part of its species, the very core had managed to resonate. A sense of home. And all he had to do was keep with it. Well, here it is, ladies and gentlemen, for what it is worth, Elias stated over the comms. I have made contact with the creature, and what more, I think I understand what it wants to do. To what end? Morrow replied. From what I can see, this area isn't exactly the right one for him, Elias responded. The ocean is wide. I think what it would prefer most would be in the open sea. That was when Kaidar chimed in. It has always wanted to go back home. It wanted to live the way it was supposed to. Is that correct? Asked Morrill. Affirmative. All Kai wants is to go back home. I think you're all going to be interested in what that has to bring, Elias replied. Now please, before the both of us die, let's see if you guys will actually do as I ask. Everything was silent. Too silent. As to whatever was to come? I had not thought that the ocean would be something so scary. Despite being allowed to spend hours in what may be called a bond session, Thorne knows to be extra careful as to whoever might want them hurt. With that thought in mind, he had ordered everyone to look out. At least this action had allowed them to see whether or not Thorne's action actually managed to have the effect that he wanted or not. "Elias, can you hear me?" said Dorv with a voice that sounded as if he wanted to throw up. "Why? How? Tell me it is not as what is seeming." "I am unsure what it is that you are seeing," said Elias. "But if I were to guess it would be for good, as I am being led straight through the space." Through the actions done to allow the beast to rampage throughout this zone, Elias was able to finally gain the knowledge of the base itself, including its flaws and what made it so special. In addition, he also managed to share much more information about himself with Kaidar, finally leading to what would be called true friendship. To think, in the hands of a couple galaxy brains, something that would take years had been all but completed in a couple days. Before they could get closer, though, there was an explosion right in front of them, stopping Kaidar right where it was in absolute shock. "What was that?" shouted Elias. As Kaidar seemed to compose himself, Elias knew something important was gonna happen. Elias knew that Kaidar could barely feel anything in the water. That meant whatever they set up had to be a lot larger than what the eye can see. "The water is not safe anymore," Kaidar had stated simply. "We must get out as soon as possible." What do you mean?" asked Elias. The situation had suddenly taken a turn for the worse. What if there would not even be time to escape? "I cannot tell you, but all I know is that we are now marked. They mean to kill us now," said Kaidar. "You must do everything in your power to make our escape." If he could trust that gut feeling in his stomach, then that meant there was no time. Whatever they had been planning to do had finally started, and it seemed they did not even want for Elias to live for any amount of time. This would be their escape point. This is it. Moral: emergency escape sequence. Set the coordinates for the surface and let's get a wriggle on. Elias barked into his calm, the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Elias! What are you doing? You can't be serious." Anya's voice came back, laced with panic. "Dead serious. If we want to make it out of here alive, then we have to go now. Besides, you owe me one, don't you?" Elias yelled, "Hurry!" Before any answer could be heard, he could just barely feel vibrations going on as Kaidar was doing what it could to swim as fast as possible. What Thorne did not realize was the vibrations of Kaidar that had helped them navigate before was now being used for ill purposes, as the facility had responded in kind, trying to find and hunt them down on the spot. The escape pods, usually used to navigate the sea threads, but instead used as a weapon. "Okay, buddy, time to dance," said Elias. Kaidar, with its superior understanding of the seas, had began zigging and zagging through the facility. He seemed to be understanding how to navigate with a beast, but it was hard to tell when he couldn't see more than a couple feet in front of him. He could only rely on what the other man could do. Then suddenly, what seemed to be large tentacles were used to grab and pull them over their tracks. "What we doing?" Elias shouted. "I have picked up something in the distance that can be of use to us," responded Kaidar. To Elias's surprise, the massive beast was making a move to go towards the beast that was following them. In this moment of pure desperation, it was that Elias finally had realized that he may be putting his life into something it shouldn't be in. Kaidar seemed to finally take the beast off of the sensor, and after a series of twists and turns, what was revealed before it was an escape pod. With their destination in sight, the duo finally reached the escape pod. As Elias was fixing the coordinates, he finally had the time to respond to what was going on. "What was that? You almost got both of us killed doing something like that. What were you thinking?" shouted Elias in shock. "We must stop our pursuers at all costs, human," Kaidar responded with full confidence. "It seems you did not know it, but they do not wish for us to leave." "Well, that's definitely putting it lightly. So how do you know we can exactly trust that?" said Elias. "I have the strength now to take us to places and to do the things required. Believe me, it is the only way to put an end to the chase," responded Kaidar. "I trust you." As they were finally making it to the teleporters, however, something in the distance seemed to be glowing red. The same eye that had been used by Kaidar. Before they were able to actually make a move, they were immediately met by a shot. The explosions then kept coming. It was a mine. With what happened then, Thorne realized that what was once a scientific endeavor had become some form of violent chase that had led them down into their death. Okay, big guy, now do you believe me that they are out to kill us? Start doing something. I am just about done fixing this ship, shouted Elias. With that, Kythar then began taking whatever machinery pieces that it can to protect what escape pod was, and used it to launch back. When the transport was finally ready for action, however, the ship was already near breaking point, a miracle that they were able to survive as is. Before all was set, there was one more message that Elias sent across to the aliens. Well, boys, this looks like goodbye. With your current actions, however, expect me to tell everyone that you aren't as good as you think you are. Goodbye. Then what was supposed to be a scientific mission ended as all other stories did. Escapism. The tranquility of Elias's self-imposed exile was shattered by a piercing alarm that ripped through Abisha, the jarring klaxon echoing in his skull. It was followed by a synthetic voice, calm yet urgent, that spoke in multiple languages, including a rough translation of Terran English. Breach detected. Leviathan Containment Zone. Sector Gamma. All personnel evacuate immediately. Elias surged to his feet, adrenaline instantly flooding his system. Sector Gamma, that was Kythar's tank. Something was terribly wrong. He sprinted towards the access corridor, the emergency lights flashing red and yellow, painting the sterile walls in a grotesque strobe. Other researchers, faces etched with panic, jostled past him, heading towards the designated evacuation points. What happened? Elias shouted, grabbing a nearby Valdarian scientist by the arm. Containment breach. Kythar's tank. Structural failure. The scientist stammered, pulling free and hurrying away. Elias's gut twisted with dread. He knew Kythar was powerful, but the tank was designed to withstand unimaginable forces. A structural failure suggested something far more sinister than mere happenstance. He pushed past the fleeing personnel, heading against the tide. He had to reach Kythar, to try and understand what was happening, to prevent whatever was about to unfold. The corridor led to a viewing platform overlooking the Leviathan tank. What Elias saw made his blood run cold. The tank was empty. The churning, inky black water was gone, replaced by the cold, hard vacuum of space. Shards of the containment barrier, shimmering like shattered ice, were scattered across the ocean floor. And towering above it all, a silhouette of obsidian and crimson, was Kythar. The Deathstalker was free. Elias watched in horror as Kythar, unleashed from its watery prison, moved through the observation deck. The creature's every step tore the facility asunder. For too long it was contained with people just looking at its power. Now it was to express such power. What would have been just a look of fascination became something entirely different. The force fields that used to protect them had little to no use against the creature. Kythar was something that these tools were never meant to counter, and it showed with every inch. It was at that moment that Elias could see that his beliefs were finally going to be put to the test. He was going to be able to help the situation, or be forever shamed by those that did not approve of him. His thoughts were then put on hold as he felt a rumble on the other side of the planet. That was not what he expected. The communication system came on and he was greeted by the voice of Morel, his tone that of a desperate panic. Elias! I don't know what you are doing, but listen up! There has been a catastrophic core breach. The Leviathan project is breaking apart. Every one of us are supposed to immediately evacuate to vessels on docking bay 2 and 4. Report your situation, shouted Morel with a great sense of urgency. Before Elias could respond to what had occurred, he watched as Kythar used his sheer size and force to finally begin charging towards what it thought to be a final goal. As he got a better glimpse into what Kythar had his eyes set on, it just seemed to bring about an even larger sense of disappointment. It was a group of fleeing scientists, but leading the group was Sinther. What came next had set in with full speed. All Elias could do was give a quick nod before running to get to whatever was going on. He needed to make a decision now. Would he let all this happen? Would he take a chance on these people and save what they could? Was it really worth the shot? Too many things all at once. Regardless of his decision, it was already too late. Just then Kythar had finally appeared before Sinther. With a thought, Kythar reached out for Sinther. Ready for what Elias had said to him, Elias moved in front, hoping to somehow be able to get through to the beast. "Kai," said Elias as he moved before the alien. "I know what you're feeling, but this ain't you. Look what happened to you before, you can't become them." The beast paused and looked down at Elias, as if it were listening. "Why do you defend these things, Dr. Thorne? They had been the reason your civilization has stagnated," shouted Sinther. "You should be with us to rid of the galaxy of these things. And replace you with the same? Then there would be nobody to believe in a better you," shouted Elias. The two ideologies clashed with Kythar in the middle of it. Both sides had their arguments, but it was only to be a matter of time to see which would succeed. It all depended on Kythar at the end. Kythar closed its eyes, before after an eternity, opened them. "Move, human," said Kythar, as it then proceeded to then ignore the screaming requests of Elias to help these people, and instead had thrown away all those that were attempting to hurt them. "You imbecile!" shouted Moral. "What do you think you are doing? With this action the entire galaxy will hunt for your head. Now you too must be put down. Dr. Thorne, you dash!" That's the last thing that he was able to muster, as the communication ended, leaving Elias completely alone with his thoughts. With that in mind, Elias started to follow Kythar, as Kythar had told him of what exactly it wanted them to do, and where to go to. "Now's not the time for moping now, Thorne, there will be time for that later," said Elias Head to him. Following Kythar, they managed to get to a couple of escape pods. "There are not enough escape pods for the both of us to escape," said Elias. "That's all right," responded Kythar. "I think it is more than time for me to finally go back home." As he heard that, Elias came to a realization. With the facility on the brink of destruction, with nothing left to keep him, and to finally do what those before him were not able to, it was the best decision for them all. "That's fine by me, but let me contact the outside first for them to know what is going on," said Elias. With a nod, Kythar then followed every single wish of Elias, it seems. With the transmission sent, it was the end. But it was only to be the beginning. The floor lurched violently beneath Elias' feet as the entire station shuddered. Metal screamed in protest, ripped apart by the immense pressure of the imploding structure. "Elias, we have to move now!" Kythar's voice boomed directly into Thorne's mind, laced with a barely suppressed urgency. "The outer sections are collapsing." He didn't need to be told twice. Elias grabbed a handful of scattered equipment and began moving with all haste. Together, the human and the apex predator navigated the chaotic corridors, a strange and unlikely alliance forged in the crucible of disaster. Kythar, despite its immense size, moved with surprising agility, using its powerful limbs to clear debris and carve a path through the collapsing structure. Its sensory organs pulsed with an eerie light, guiding them through the swirling darkness. Elias, relying on his own instincts and a rudimentary map downloaded from the station's failing databanks, directed Kythar towards the designated escape pod bay. The corridors were a maelstrom of collapsing structures, electrical fires, and escaping water. They passed scenes of destruction and chaos, glimpsing terrified researchers of various species desperately trying to reach safety. There was an inherent sadness and sorrow for Elias. Here he was, an apex communicator, stuck between choosing to save a small group and saving another species. He could only hope that by some miracle, all will end up all right. In between their actions, the voice of Moral then came across one more time. Elias figured that he should probably know what it was that he had wanted now that all things had come to pass. "Elias," he started. "I don't understand how I could have been so wrong. I think it's okay, man." "You didn't know," said Elias. "No, that's not it, what all this has shown to me. What this is showing to me is that there is just so much to learn in the universe that is more important than what has already been set in stone," replied Moral. "It's why before you go, would you like to take the place that I was supposed to have? I would love for you to guide these guys now and into the future." "That's very sweet and all, but I think I have other plans," If your boys want a chance at learning what I know, however, then they can learn it themselves. I wouldn't want something else to explode on my face, you know? Replied Elias with a chuckle. Well, looks like we are here, so it's been nice talking to you. If you need me, I will be out in the stars. They reached the escape pod bay, a large, circular chamber lined with a dozen launch tubes. The pods were designed for a single occupant, a problem that Kythar's massive bulk rendered immediately apparent. There's no way for us to both leave, Elias said, surveying the escape pod facility as their exit destination continued to be flooded with the deep sea. To his side, Kythar tilted its head slightly and said, The Apex has a way, always. There was, however, something else they could see. 2 pods that for whatever reason were left unmanned. There wasn't much to be done then to create what exactly must come. He was given the choice to split the vessels and be as is, or to do something completely reckless and combine their pods, and as a result have something big enough to escape the facility alive, let alone enough space for his gargantuan friend. All right, buddy. Elias grinned, placing his hand on a panel to activate the modifications. It's about to get bumpy. With every ounce of his strength and the power of the beast, they managed to create a ship that could get them out there. A series of explosions rocked the escape pod bay. They had run out of time. It's now or never, shouted Elias. Ready to go, old boy? The great beast could only nod with what little life they had left before charging themselves up for their next endeavor. Together the duos started their ascent with speed. They could see all the destruction that they left, with all forms of metal and lifeforms flying all around them like mere toys in a bathtub. At that moment they flew out into the world they once desired to see, Nexus V. That transmission was then sent, finally putting it out there that something had changed with humanity, Elias and Kythar. As the news reached Earth of the survival of Apex Predator and a human as it had left the facility that was now ruined, there was no doubt what was to be asked of them. Not only the story, but just what had changed. They had asked Elias, "Why did you choose them? It was an apex predator for all things good and holy. Did you not fear for your life? Did I not care for all that I had done? Why did I choose something like that over all of Earth?" He had then responded, "When it comes down to it, Kythar and your people are not so different. All beings, no matter how strong, want to live in a world they can call safe. We humans have been all too good at doing it together, and that is what makes me the sea madman that you know. This way. There is beauty all across the galaxy, if you just stop to listen." It had taken much time and effort, but as a result the galaxy began to change. Not just through the Stellar Alliance but also Nexus. With a new leader in tow, it was more than just a matter of weaponizing but what was truly important to this group of people. It was a new type of friendship that was able to make people truly understand and respect each other like what never happened before. As a result, the galaxy had entered an age of discovery. No weapons were being used but simply knowledge was. Trade bloomed like it never had before, and because of the bond between a human and an alien, they were able to make it all work. It was for this reason all it really took to change the universe to be a better version than what it was that a human, the one with a love for the sea,